One of the most important paradigm shifts that I've ever had in my life is how important language is, and the fact that we are not even aware of how it actually works on a neurological level and a psychological level. And I remember watching Jordan Peterson, and he was talking a lot on that you need to be very careful with the way that you speak and the way that you phrase things and the way that you articulate your thoughts, and make sure that you try your best to be as accurate as possible in a way that actually genuinely reflects how do you see things when you try to transmit that information to another human being, or when you try to write it down and take a look at your own thoughts from a third person perspective. And he was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the way that he was like putting sentences together and different thoughts, and like sit down and explain something that Nietzsche said on a toilet, and he takes 3 hours to like unpack. It was absolutely beautiful, and I was always fascinated by that. Although at the time when I started watching Jordan Peterson, I found it really difficult to fully understand what he was saying because my English was, well, absolutely horrible. However, I the more that I listened, the more that I understood what he was trying to say, the more that I understood the depth behind the words that he uses. So I started thinking about it and reflecting and meditating on the importance of language myself. And I noticed that it's probably the most powerful thing that you can use. And it makes you so dangerous in a good way that it's absolutely baffling to me that they don't teach this in school to kids. Not just that, it became something that is, I was so annoyed at myself for not putting that as a priority, because it doesn't matter which endeavor or which path you take in life, whether you're a plumber, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's you thinking through complex problems or even simple problems, whether it's you communicating with your mom or dad, whether you on a sales call or you are trying to actually get someone to sell their house as an agent, whether you're a business owner, whether you're raising your kids, it doesn't matter which aspect, which domain, which part of life. Communicating is the number one skill that guarantees your success or make it way, way more likely than someone who is struggling to communicate simple thoughts, or at least communicate thoughts accurately in a way that makes sense to another human being, and you don't just like hope that they guess what you mean accurately. So here is my take on that whole thing. I grew up in a horrible environment. It's like it's absolutely horrible. That's like it's an understatement to call it that. And when I started to think about this, I noticed something. And what I noticed was you don't really see change if you are the person that is changing. And what I mean by that, it's like if you meet your uncle and then you like a long period of time goes by without seeing him, and then when he sees you, if you're going through puberty, if you're like from 7 to 16, he gets like absolutely shocked by how much you've grown and how tall you became. But in your head, you're like, bro, chill out. It's not that bad. It's like you're kind of exaggerating. They're not. The thing is, you are you, and you are with yourself 24/7 every single day. And because of that, you are not capable of seeing the change that happens to you. And this is on a physical level. So if you go to the gym, you train, you don't really notice the change. unless that you're getting the beginner gains at the first 3 months. But you don't really notice the change across a long period of time. You notice it the most when you take a look at old pictures and you're like, holy, what that I came a long way. And that doesn't just happen on a physical level, that also is true on a psychological level. And when you put yourself in an environment for a certain period of time, that environment will start latching out on you and it will start tainting you, and you will start to change on a psychological level, and you won't be able to detect that or see it. So I was like, okay, I'm in a very, and I'm in a horrible environment. So how can I actually protect myself from that? What, like, if I can't see that I am changing, who can? And that's what it clicked for me. The way that our words are linked to our thoughts and our unconscious is so deeply entangled that the words that we choose are not consciously chosen. Like when I'm speaking right now, I'm not sitting thinking that I'm gonna pick every single word that comes out of my mouth. I have an idea, I have a structure in my head, and somehow my brain knows exactly what to say based on my unconscious and the way that I've structured that idea in my brain in the past. And these words get chosen. Also, my own perspective on each word determine which word I use. So if I have a negative association with the word pain, that means I'm going to use it as a negative thing to describe negative scenarios. If I have a positive association with the word pain, that means I'm going to use it in a positive way, in positive scenario. And that is because of the whole experience that I've had with that word in the past and the way that it was presented to me as a child. So, what I've seen is when your unconscious starts to change because of the environment, the first thing that changes that you can actually measure it and actually be aware of it is your words. So, when you speak, you notice that you will start speaking like the people, like you will notice that you started speaking like the people you spend the most time with. I'm sure this is true for example, if you have a friend and you spend a lot of time together, you will start seeing that you guys have your own language, like internal jokes, and you speak in a very similar way. And that is not something that happened by your design or you chose it consciously. It's something that happened unconsciously. And you should ask your question, why is that happening? Why my words are changing and I am not the one who changed them? That's because you're unconscious and your belief system and who you are slightly changed. So you started describing the world, sorry, in words that matches the way that they see it as well. And that's where this became apparent to me. It's like if I want to make sure that I'm protected and I am not tainted by the environment, I need to pay attention and make sure that my words are always consistent with who I am and always reflect what I actually believe and think. And if there is slight changes that happens, I need to be very aware of them and make sure that I stop them and I don't let them take over. So I did this thing when I was like in high school, I think. And I was like, I'm going to stop speaking in a way that makes me weak. And I kid you not, 90% of my vocabulary just vanished. It was really difficult to pay attention to it, but the way that I was speaking was portraying me as a weak person. And that's probably because deep down, psychologically, I believe that I'm a weak person. So the way that I was describing myself or the way that I was dealing with situations in terms of how I pick words and how I articulate my thoughts was in alignment with that belief that I've had. Now, it's very difficult to change a belief, but it's not difficult to change the way that you speak about that belief. And if you, it's like it's a two-way street. It's like you change your belief, your words change. But also, if you change your words for long enough, your belief will change because the literal definition of words, they are the only thing that you have to build your own perspective and paradigm on what reality is. This something is not it's not going to be that difficult for people that speak two languages to understand, because when I say chair and then I say kursi, which is a second word for chair in Arabic, the image that comes to my mind is completely different in these two scenarios. And when you go even deeper, when you see how sentences are structured differently across cultures and languages, you can link that to why they see the world in a different way than you do, is because their only link to reality, which is the way that they describe it, their words, is not the same as you. And if you want to look at the world in a way that serves your goals, you need to make sure that you describe it that way, because the reality is not objective, it's subjective. We like to look at it from a materialist point of view. I think that we have an objective version of reality in our heads. You don't. If you describe a situation negatively, then your words will taint that situation in your head and you will remember it negatively, although it has nothing to do with the objective situation that happened. So you are more than capable of completely twisting reality to make sure that it fits the narrative that you want to feed yourself, whether that's negative or positive. It doesn't matter. So your goal should be to always describe the world in a way that makes it more likely for you to achieve your goals. Now, of course, there is a limit to that. Like, you can be completely delusional and stupid and be like, yeah, I believe humans can fly, and then jump off a bridge. And then what happens? You will die, obviously. So there is a limit to it. You can't like just go on and start bending reality too much. But what I'm saying is there is like a small space where reality could be manipulated in a way that doesn't break it but also serves you. And most people, when they are not aware of this fact, well, they don't manipulate reality, reality manipulates them. And that's where the problem lies, with you not being articulate and not being able to articulate your thoughts and reflect who you are in a way that you know is accurate to what you see in your head. Because then what happens, will you're not going to be able to even understand yourself. You're not going to be able to understand reality in a way that is coherent and consistent. Reality will change based on your feelings. Reality will change based on what you want it to be to serve some unconscious drive that you're not even conscious that it exists, because you're not able to articulate it well. There is nothing that is more important than you being able to speak coherently and accurately. And the thing is, when I understood this, I started diving deeper into it and started looking at it on from a business perspective. And from a business perspective, the more or the closer you get to reality, the more likely it is for you to succeed. And if you are not capable of describing reality accurately, then it's almost impossible for you to succeed. Now, remember, I know I said earlier that you should always describe the world that makes it more likely for you to achieve your goals. Like, that's the metric that you should use. That's your northern star. It's not whether I am right or wrong. It's whether the way that I'm describing this, does it make it more likely or less likely that I achieve my goal? Because you are not capable of determining what's right or wrong, because your vision, whether you want it, whether you like it or not, will always be subjective. The answer, when it gets linked to business, how do you describe the world in a way that makes it more likely to achieve your goal? Well, then you don't focus on emotions, you focus on you being as objective as humanly possible. That's the way that you need to describe the world from a business perspective to make sure that you succeed. So A good example here would be Alex Hormozy. Alex Hormozy put so much attention and effort and energy into describing business terms and identity in a way that is so materialistic that makes sure that he's as close as humanly possible to objective reality. So, because that gives him the most leverage and that makes it easier for him to transmit that information and put it into someone else's head where they perfectly understand exactly what he means so they can actually act upon that if he's managing people. And if he is able to put words in a way that makes it easy for people to understand. So, therefore, they can actually act upon it, and that decreases the likelihood of them making a mistake. Then he is gonna achieve more because people that work for him will be able to work better. Not just that, he will be able to identify problems in a more accurate way because he is able to take a closer look at reality and make sure that he sees exactly what's wrong, not what he thinks is wrong, not what other people are telling him is wrong, but what is actually wrong. Because business requires an objective, or at least as close as you can get to objective vision. A different example would be the person that was the strongest person in the world. I think it was a deadlift. It's like the heaviest deadlift ever. What he did was he described the situation in his head. He was closing his eyes and he went through hypnosis and extreme psychological training to believe and to think and to see that when he is lifting that weight, he's not lifting the weight that is like just a deadlift in a competition. He was lifting a car that has his wife and his children underneath it. And you're like, okay, this guy is delusional. He achieved the goal of lifting the weight. So you see my point. You need to be very careful. Sometimes describing the world in a way that is not accurate is absolutely dangerous and it will just destroy your life. But sometimes describing it in that way will just increase the likelihood that you succeed. When it comes to business, you need to be as accurate as possible. When it comes to other things, well, that's up for you to decide whether you should be accurate or you should actually put some effort into describing it in a way that increases the likelihood that you succeed in your goal. Your goal should always be your North Star. How can I describe the world in a way that makes sure that me achieving my goal will be more likely? So here is the thing. Obviously, I had a lot of questions in my head now saying this because people will be like, okay, when is it appropriate to actually like start lying? As I've said earlier and made that clear, you should always make sure that you don't bend reality too much until you break it. You have a very small window in which describing things in a different way is appropriate. And I'm not saying complete delusion here. I just need to make that clear if it's not already. And I'm going to give an example just to like to hammer that point home. So let's say you're trying to learn how to drive. And because of your experience, let's say your mom and your dad both individually had an accident in the past. And let's say the conversations about driving in your childhood were like driving is really dangerous, it's extremely difficult, and you have this fear associated with driving now. And you have a personal negative experience that happened to your mom and dad separately that is at an unconscious level is affecting the way that you see driving. And let's say there is another you in an alternate universe that had none of that. It's just driving is like something that is so simple. Driving is fun. Your dad was watching Formula One growing up. You were seeing him. People were driving extremely fast. And you saw that it's very unlikely for them to crash. And you just enjoyed the thrill of driving. In both of these scenarios, you are now 16. You're trying to learn how to drive because you are taking on more responsibilities and you need to be able to take yourself from point A to point B without relying on your mom or dad like a baby. So what happens here? Both of these people will have a very different experience and a very different ideology and a very different way of describing their way through learning how to drive. One of them will be like, yeah, I'm going to learn how to drive. The other one will be like, yeah, I need to learn how to drive, but I'm kind of scared. So their words, their body language, the way that they describe it will be completely different. They are describing the same thing, but they're describing it differently. And one of them will have a way easier experience learning the driving than the other. I think you're smart enough to figure that on your own. So I think I made it clear. I'm not saying about complete delusion and just like make reality bend and like completely saying things that don't even make sense. I'm just saying small changes in the way that you describe things could make it more likely easier or make the experience way better if you're trying to achieve a certain goal. So, why does that happen at the first place? Why do we, or a better way of phrasing this would be, why are we not aware of these things? Well, because you're not as smart as you think you are. And this goes on a like it's a very deep complicated thing that's probably going to take another like 10 minutes to explain. So I'm not going to dive deep into this subject right now. I'll probably leave it for a separate video in the future. But the message here that I'm trying to tell you is the way that you describe the world will determine how the world looks like in your brain. And the way that your brain see and perceive the world will determine what do you think is possible and impossible. It will make your experience real to you. And it will be something that you use to either twist past scenarios or make assumptions on future scenarios based on the worldview that you hold. And if your worldview is counterproductive, negative, or it has inaccurate data being inputted into that worldview, you will find you will find it very, very difficult to move forward in life in a way that is seamless and fun. So the way that I describe business and I describe all of that is like just being fun. I actually I have a whiteboard here that says enjoy work, because I want to always remind myself that work can be enjoyable. Difficult scenarios and difficult things are fun because they're only a testament of to how good I am. And the fact that I am facing life and it's challenging and it's difficult just makes it less likely for other people to do the same, which increase the probability that I succeed. So the more difficult things are, the more that I enjoy them, because the more that I feel that I'm special. Probably it's like if I'm gonna dive like deep psychologically into this, I'm just gonna find some pretty dark things. So the point here is just pay attention to the way that you speak. Try your best to always express yourself accurately, and don't underestimate the power of words, because words are a energy transmission. If I speak negatively, I'm just transmitting that energy to you because you hear negative words. And if you have a negative association with these words in your head, that means you're going to get a negative feeling about the thing that I'm describing because of the words that I use describing it. So if I speak positively, I'm going to transmit positive energy to other people. If I speak negatively, I'm going to transmit that. If I speak confidently, I'm going to transmit confidence. That's like very important in sales, by the way. Uh, the most important thing that you can do that can actually increase your sales conversion rate has nothing to do with the script or tonality. These things are important, but conviction is the most important thing of all. And conviction is that you genuinely, deeply believe that your product is gonna change their lives, or it's actually something that is gonna be very, very, very important into your customer's life and actually help them achieve their goals. And that's why making sure that you develop your product in a way that you actually believe in it is like the most important thing. Like, don't sell things that you don't believe in. Please, for the love of God, make sure that you always make the best possible Decisions not for yourself, but for customers that you work with. But when you have that belief genuinely on a deep unconscious level, what ends up happening is you end up transmitting that belief because the words that you will unconsciously pick will always signify confidence in the project, in the product, in the service, whatever it is that you're selling. And not just words, your demeanor, the look in your eyes, the way that you speak, the tonality, the body language. So instead of just working on each one of these things separately and try to fake it, maybe you should actually build belief in yourself and your product, and then these things will fall into alignment with you acting confidently, speaking in the right tonality, choosing the right words, and carrying yourself in a way that transmit confidence into your potential clients. That's one of the most important things to understand. And you can take that same concept and then look across your life and see where that can be used or when it can be implemented. And if you do that, you stop looking at words the same. And I promise you, if you just sit down and think through it and try to actually understand how important language is and do your own research on the matter, you will be absolutely, maybe my reaction was anger. It was like, how the hell I didn't know about this? Why they're not teaching this in school? And why is it not my priority? And I made it my priority. And I'm not saying I'm a very good speaker yet, but I think I'm above average. And I think I'm still working on it. And I will continue working on it until I reach a level where I am as eloquent as I can possibly get. So that's what I wanted to touch on. I think it's a very important subject. And it was also an exercise for me. I was like, I'm going to pick a subject and I'm just going to talk and I'm not going to cut and I'm going to try my best to be as articulate and as eloquent and as good as possible with the way that I walk through these ideas. So I hope I did a good job. I mean, I'm gonna watch this video and review that and see what can I improve. But this is also something that I am paying more attention to, and it's something that is very important. It makes me like YouTube and making YouTube videos even more because I don't do cuts. I don't cut videos, and that's on purpose because that puts me in a position where I am forced to articulate complicated ideas or simple ideas in a way that is coherent and eloquent and try my best to minimize the amount of mistakes that I make. And putting myself into that position will just force me to improve the way that I speak. And I think improving the way that I speak will transmit into every other area of my life. And that's a very good deal. So that's the concept of today. And see you soon.